Hello, fellow YouTubers and photographers. 2 days ago, on Monday, so for you it's already 5 days ago, I received a message from YouTube saying that my channel reached 100 subscribers. And you wouldn't believe how happy I was about this message. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for supporting this little growing community and supporting the channel by subscribing, liking, and leaving comments below. I'm so happy and grateful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I thought I'd take this opportunity to do a different video today. So I won't talk about technical aspects of photography, but I thought I'd share a little bit about myself so that you actually get to know me, to see who you are actually following here on YouTube, and tell you a little bit more about my life, what I'm doing besides photography. Also, what is new in this video today is I switched video editing to DaVinci Resolve 15. So I hope by the time that I see this footage on my PC and cut it and color grade it and everything, that you like it and that you enjoy it as much as you did my previous videos, or maybe even a little bit more. But before we get into today's topic, so getting to know myself, a little intro and then we get started. I decided to start this video by talking a little bit about what I'm doing for a living next to photography. So photography is not my main source of income, and afterwards also tell you what else is going on in my life, what I'm doing besides work and photography. But before we get into that, let me explain to you what I do for a living. As you might recall from my very first video, I mentioned that I'm a future archaeologist and photographer. So what is a future archaeologist? Let me explain to you a little bit more what I'm actually doing there. So picture a normal archaeologist. So an archaeologist usually goes to a dig site or finds something that comes from the past. And then an archaeologist typically tries to make sense out of that, analyze it, explore it. And then when they have their findings, they bring these artifacts that they found, or the findings in general, and present them to the public. Maybe in a museum, for example, so that you can go there and explore them and learn about them. So I, as a future archaeologist, I do the same thing, but not with objects from the past, but with things from the future. So that means that I, as opposed to a normal archaeologist, I venture into the future. And I'm not doing this alone. There's a whole team behind this with all different types of people from different backgrounds. And we venture as far as 20 years from now into the future, meaning in mid-century. So picture 2050 and the years around that. So we venture into that future and then try to imagine how life might be under those circumstances that we might encounter. So there's a lot of imagination going on and anticipation. And once we stumble upon something and we discover something, like a normal archaeologist, we take a look at it, we analyze it, and we try to make sense out of it. And once we have done so, we bring these artifacts to the present and expose them to people who live in today's time. And it's such a joy actually to see how people react to these findings, what sense they make out of them, how they react to these things, what feedback we receive on them. So I feel very privileged doing that, and it's a lot of fun actually. So this is more or less, in very high level terms, what I am doing for a living. Now let's come to some other things that I do besides work and photography, which is, for example, painting or drawing. As you might have realized in the videos behind me, there's a painting I'm working on already for a while. It's still not finished. There's some finishing touching I still need to do before I can move on to the next one. And I also like to play computer games, or gaming in general, for example on consoles like the PlayStation 4 that I own or the Nintendo Switch. So these are also things that occupy my free time next to photography, and they give me so much joy, and I learn so many things by practicing those things as well. Generally, you could say that I'm a curious person, so I really like to learn new things, meet new people, and and venture into topics that I'm not so familiar with, or I didn't learn them in school or at university. So another thing that I try to learn, I get more and more familiar over time, is now astronomy. And I mean, by now I'm saying this is like something that is going on for around 15 years now. So I'm reading books, watching a lot of YouTube videos about space and matter, physics. All these things truly fascinate me, and along these topics I really like science fiction, be it in reading books about science fiction or watching science fiction shows or movies. And most of all, of course, Star Trek. Star Trek is one of my passions when it comes to science fiction, and it gives me a lot of inspiration, which helps me actually at work and also, believe it or not, in photography. So yeah, this is kind of like a little round trip through my life next to photography that I was mostly talking on this channel so far. Let's now come to photography. So back in 2005, I moved to the US, to California, with 2 suitcases and with me a little point and shoot camera from Canon, PowerShot G2. And shortly after, I decided that I want to buy a real camera to document my life and to share pictures from my time in California with my family who was back in Germany. So I bought a Nikon D70S digital SLR camera to do so. But at the same time, when I bought the camera, I decided that I want to learn how to properly take pictures and not just use the expensive, at that time, expensive DSLR for some point and shoot type of photography. So I bought this book that I also mentioned in one of my previous videos, which is called Exposure. And I learned with this book how to take photos in complete manual mode. So my first couple of years with an SLR, I more or less just took photos in fully manual mode, but with autofocus. So I didn't use shutter priority or aperture priority or none of these features that the camera actually had, because I really wanted to learn how photography actually works. And so I got more and more into photography, took lots and lots of pictures at that time, and truly enjoyed it. So over time, I learned so much that I grew beyond the capabilities of the Nikon D70S and decided to buy a new camera. And that was around 2012, so full 7 years actually after I bought the Nikon D70S, and I bought a Nikon D700. That was my first full-frame DSLR camera. I bought new lenses. I bought the f2.8 kit, the 24x70, later the 70-200mm lens, and then also the wide-angle one, the 14-24mm. And I learned so much more and grew, and my passion for photography kept going and going. And I also started to learn about aperture priority at that time, and figuring out for myself when that was the right type of shooting for me, and when I was still switching back to manual because I was so used to it. I felt so comfortable shooting in manual mode. And so I kept going with this camera for a couple of years, and then switched to a Nikon D750 with the same lens line, because that camera just offered more capabilities that I needed. It had a higher resolution, and I also got into panorama photography, which really got way better with the Nikon D750. And around that time, I discovered street photography and the pros and cons shooting with a DSLR on the street, and quickly figured out that it was not the right type of camera for me to do this kind of photography, and I really wanted to find out if I want to get more serious with photography and not just use it on vacations or to document my life. So I bought a Fuji X100S, and God, I really love that camera. I already played in my head with the idea to buy a Leica, but I was still unsure. The price tag was really high. I didn't know if I could handle fixed lenses. So the Fuji really gave me a good entry in this type of photography. The camera was small, had this fixed lens to a like 35mm equivalent, and I started shooting manual again. I played around with manual focusing. I was using the EVF at that time with focus peaking, and I really got used to it. I really get more and more familiar with it. I realized that I didn't get to shoot with the Nikon as much as anymore. And over time, again, years later, then in 2016, I saw the announcement of Leica of the Leica M D. So this Leica that I'm shooting now with next to my M6, a digital Leica rangefinder with no back screen, and it was so tempting. I really still remember the day when it was announced and me playing around with the thought of, shall I put down the money to buy this camera actually? Do I really want to get serious with street photography and this new type of photography that I was discovering with the Fuji at that time? And I did it. I pre-ordered it. It was not on the market yet, so I blindly called the Leica store here in Zurich and ordered the camera so that as soon as they got it, that I can pick it up and start this new journey that I was talking about in my very first video. And yeah, so since then I'm a very happy Leica shooter. At this moment in time, I cannot imagine switching from Leica to any other brand. These cameras provide exactly for me what I'm looking for, what I was looking for. And yeah, so I'm very happy with these cameras. The M6 came later. The M6 came last year. I bought it in September, and I wanted to get into analog photography. I wanted to get into know film. I wanted to learn how to develop film myself and to figure out how this type of photography actually feels for me. And in the future I will also do more videos on the M6 as well on this channel. I'll tell you more about the films that I use, the type of photos that I do with it. Also in this video at the end I will share photos that I took with the M6 this time and not with the Leica M D, so you get a feeling about what I'm doing actually with my analog camera. And just last weekend I was developing another 2 film rolls. It's so much joy for me to get into that process as well, so I have the full control. So making up the composition of a photo in my mind, using the tool, so the M6 to take the photo, when the film is done, taking the film out, processing it myself, scanning the photos, bringing them into Lightroom, and having this end-to-end control with basically no technology in my way, so that I can fully express myself as a photographer, to show to the world what I actually meant when I captured that moment. Yeah, so this is it for today. This was my little video about myself, what I'm doing. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked what you heard. I hope you don't regret subscribing to this channel. And I hope that you will stay with me and help me grow this little community. I'm looking forward making more videos for you, talking about my life as a photographer, maybe also from time to time about my life in general. And yeah, so please let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do so. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm now going to show you a couple of photos that I took with the Leica M D. And thank you again for subscribing to this channel and supporting me on this journey. It's a true pleasure for me to be here with you. And so see you next time. Goodbye.